And I thought that, I've been listening all day to the presenters, and when I helped carry kind of structure today, I really wanted to make sure that it was like stripped back, because I know we can very quickly go down this steep slope and rabbit hole. And I want you to all go down the rabbit hole, but I know that it's not something you can just, you kind of want a little slope, right? Not just a drop. So I thought, we've got 5 minutes. I might try and peel it back and just get us all comfortable with some of the really foundational stuff about what a blockchain is, so that we can start to then build on top. And that's really the outcome that we're looking for. So when we have, Bitcoin, and then we start talking about Ethereum, and raise your hand if you don't know the difference. If you don't know the difference between the two. Okay, that's actually, but even then there's that level of unsureness, right? I think if we can understand Bitcoin properly, then we can start to go, oh, okay, so Ethereum does this tiny little part different, and you get these different benefits. But I think if you go down the rabbit hole too quick and you don't really have your head wrapped around Bitcoin, trying to then understand Ethereum and then tokens that you make on Ethereum is a very, you're just going to end up in the wrong spot. And on top of that, Bitcoin means different things to everyone. And so there's just so many different ways you can get lost. In saying that, when we talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about a network of computers distributed around the world, and these computers are incentivized through the earning of Bitcoin to secure the network. And the reason that is important is because if you have different actors, different businesses or individuals that are geographically spread out, and they all contribute to securing the network and validating that if person A sends Bitcoin to person B, all of them collectively go, could he do that? Oh, he's proved that he could. We now recognize that. We update our record. What you start to have is one kind of risk resolved. You can't then go and shut it down in one spot. If it was a centralized entity like an issuing bank, then they could be regulated and they could be shut down, right? But when we talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about spreading that out nice and far. The other area that is heavily related to that is, of course, who mines those transactions, who verifies them. Because if it's one big business and that one big business is global, then you could have a risk of they get too much control. And I think that this is really where the power of Bitcoin comes in, when you look at who controls how things change over time. And by that, it's really, you have an ecosystem, and I know Stefan spoke about this earlier, but it's to me, it's the most important thing to understand. If I'm a coder, I write little improvements that I think will upgrade Bitcoin, I don't just get to push that live. And there are core development teams that do get, from the respect they have, a lot of say. But what happens is I propose it, and I say, please, I think this will make it faster. And then what we have is essentially review. So people might come back and they say, yes, that would make it faster, but it means that perhaps these big mining companies get too much control. And so you end up with this big discourse around, do we want to go that way? Should we stay the same and wait for a different proposal from someone to make it faster without risking some sort of centralization, and the whole thing is pointless, right? At what point it becomes a change is if it gets, so I'm running out of time. So we've got the miners that implement the code. They go, this is the version of Bitcoin that I support. We've got developers that would give them the code. So if the miner goes, this is the Bitcoin I support, but then the actual people that buy it, invest it, trade it, retailers that accept it, if they think that that code gives the miners too much power, because of course the miners might like that, they can say, well, we're not going to buy that version of Bitcoin. We don't support it. And you can have effectively a fork, a split, where you have two different types of Bitcoin. You might have a community, and we've seen this with Bitcoin Cash. There was arguments over how to make it faster and more scalable, and there was disagreements with the safest way to do that without sacrificing some of the core values around stability and being decentralized, and there was a split. And then we let the marketplace determine which one is the real Bitcoin, and now we have Bitcoin Cash. I actually couldn't tell you what it's trading at. I don't really look at it. And then we have Bitcoin, which has the still vast majority of dominance. So when you understand that all these things come together, the miners can't get more power because they say so, especially in the position that they're in right now. If we don't let them get it in the first place, they can't kind of cascade. We've got retailers that can choose to accept certain types of cryptocurrencies over another. We've got exchanges that can choose which kinds of cryptocurrencies they support, and with that, can effectively limit, support, same thing. And you've got people, you've got coders, and so when these all come together, they each have their own incentives, and you can end up, the end goal, and I think it's what I started on, is like, how do you make this thing so you can trust it? And the only way you can ever stay there is if it remains spread out enough that none of these groups have say over the complete direction. And at the moment, it's achieving that, and so it's a bit of a game of like, how do we make it more robust? Anyway, it's well and truly time for lunch, so get out there, spin the HiveEx wheel. Thank you.